You're on a tug-of-war team. 8 people, 1 rope, 1 goal. Pull harder than the other side. You grip the rope. You dig your heels in. You pull with everything you've got. Or at least that's what you tell yourself. Because here's the unsettling truth. The moment you joined that team, you almost certainly started pulling less hard than you would have alone. Not because you're lazy. Not because you don't care. Because of something buried so deep in human psychology that most people go their entire lives without noticing it's happening to them. In the 1880s, a French agricultural engineer named Max Ringelmann ran an experiment that had nothing to do with psychology. He was studying farm efficiency, specifically how many oxen or horses you needed to pull a given load. But then he decided to test humans the same way. He had individuals pull on a rope and measured the force. Then he added a second person, then a third. Then he kept going, all the way up to 8 people pulling together. Logically, 8 people should pull roughly 8 times harder than 1 person alone. That's simple math, but that's not what happened. When 2 people pulled together, they only generated about 93% of their combined individual strength. With 3 people, it dropped to 85%. By the time he got to 8 people on the rope, each person was contributing less than half of what they were capable of alone. Ringelmann didn't have a name for what he'd found. It would take almost a century before psychologists picked the idea back up and gave it one: social loafing. But the effect itself has been quietly running in the background of human behavior since long before anyone measured it. Here's the part that should make you a little uncomfortable. This isn't about weak effort or bad teammates. Ringelmann's data showed the drop-off happened consistently, predictably, across nearly everyone tested. It wasn't a few slackers dragging the average down. It was baked into how groups work. The bigger the group, the more each person quietly assumes someone else will pick up the slack. Think about the last group project you were part of. Maybe it was work. Maybe it was school. Remember that one person who barely contributed and somehow nobody called them out on it? You weren't imagining that. And if you're being honest with yourself, in a big enough group, you've probably been that person too, without even realizing it. In the 1970s, psychologists Bibb Latané, Kip Williams, and Stephen Harkins decided to test this properly, outside of a rope and outside of a farm. They blindfolded participants, put headphones on them so they couldn't hear anyone else, and told them to shout and clap as loud as they could. Sometimes they were told they were doing it alone. Sometimes they were told 5 other people were shouting and clapping right along with them, even though they were actually alone in the room the entire time. The results mirrored Ringelmann's rope experiment almost exactly. When people believed they were part of a group, they produced dramatically less noise, even though physically nothing had changed. Their own effort, their own voice, their own hands, all of it quietly dialed back the moment they believed other people shared the responsibility. So why does this happen? Psychologists point to a few overlapping reasons, and once you hear them, you'll probably recognize yourself in at least one. The first is the diffusion of accountability. In a group of 2, if the task fails, it's 50-50 obvious whose fault it is. In a group of 8, failure gets diluted across so many people that no single person feels the weight of it. Your brain does a quiet, unconscious calculation. If this goes wrong, it won't specifically be on me. The second reason is what researchers call the sucker effect. Nobody wants to be the person working at 100% while everyone else coasts. So the moment you suspect others might be slacking, even a little, you unconsciously pull back too, just to avoid feeling exploited. It's not laziness. It's self-protection dressed up as laziness. The third reason is even stranger. In large groups, individual contribution becomes almost impossible to measure. Nobody can tell exactly how hard you pulled on that rope, or how loud you personally clapped inside a crowd of 6. And when effort becomes invisible, motivation quietly drains out of it. Humans, it turns out, work hardest when they know they're being watched and measured. Take away the spotlight, and the engine idles. Here's where it gets even more interesting. This effect isn't fixed. Researchers found specific conditions that make social loafing disappear almost entirely. When individual contributions are clearly tracked, the effect vanishes. When the task feels personally meaningful rather than arbitrary, the effect shrinks dramatically. And when group members know and trust each other, rather than being strangers thrown together, people work almost as hard as they would alone. This is why a small, tight-knit team of 3 highly motivated people can regularly outperform a bloated department of 30. It's not about talent, it's about visibility. In a group of 3, everyone can see exactly who's carrying weight and who isn't. In a group of 30, you could disappear for a month and nobody would be entirely sure whose job it was to notice. And this doesn't just apply to ropes and shouting contests. It shows up in office meetings where 12 people are invited and maybe 3 actually contribute. It shows up in group chats where a question gets asked and everyone assumes somebody else will answer it. It shows up in emergencies too, the well-documented phenomenon where a person collapses in a crowded street, and the more people who witness it, the less likely any single person is to step in and help. Not because people are cruel, because responsibility, spread across enough people, can shrink down to something that feels like it belongs to no one at all. So next time you're part of a group, a project, a team, a crowd, ask yourself an uncomfortable question. Are you pulling as hard as you would if it were just you on that rope? Or has some quiet, ancient part of your brain already done the math? Already decided someone else will pick up the slack? Already let you off the hook without you even noticing? Max Ringelmann never set out to expose something so fundamental about human nature. He just wanted to know how hard people pull on a rope. But what he found was something almost every one of us does, every single day, without ever admitting it to ourselves.